are in the retail business. We have people who are in the supply side and the logistics business. We have people who are also working on the initial supply of electric vehicles into Nigeria, and some of them will be speaking to us this morning. I am not a speaker today, so let me not take any more of your time. Let me once again welcome you very warmly for coming out this morning, and also to extend thanks to Moman for agreeing with us that it makes sense for us to gather here this morning, so together we can begin to search for a very seamless way of making that transition to a deregulated market, but not only that, but of offering value to Nigerians, as we must. We want to see a market of the future where you can drive into a retail station and you can buy petrol, you can buy diesel, you can buy CNG for your cars, and you can charge your electric vehicles. That's the market that we at Business Day, and I believe with Moman as well, that we look forward to seeing. And part of the conversation this morning will border around how you, by policy, we can create a path without bottlenecks that lead us to that ideal situation where you go to a retail station and you have a plethora of choices depending on what kind of car you are bringing in. And all of this, we believe, will be price sensitive, so that if you're bringing in a petrol car and someone is bringing an electric vehicle car, you can begin to think, oh, why am I using a petrol car when I could be using an electric vehicle, or when I could be using CNG too. And then, of course, issues around safety, just to ensure, as we tap the gas market, that we are doing it safely, so that our cars are not blowing up on the highways. You get it. But as I said earlier, we have a responsibility, those of us that are here this morning, to ensure that we are engaging with the Nigerian public honestly, transparently, in a manner that even for things that are hard and painful, that at least they see the truth, in the hope that they can begin to be apostles of the things that we all champion. I'm aware, for instance, that Sterling Bank, and hopefully we should have someone from Sterling Bank today. Great. I'm aware that Sterling Bank has a charging station where those who have an electric vehicle can drive into and charge their vehicles. And from what I hear, there is a second one coming at the a location near Sterling Bank headquarters on Marina. So, hey guys, the journey has started. The bus is about to leave. So let's get on it. And let's take Nigeria to where it truly belongs, for our sake and for the sake of our children. Once again, welcome, and thank you so much for coming out. Let me immediately invite a gentleman that I have met recently, but for whom I have the highest esteem, Hugh Stockman, who is the CEO for NNPC Retail, and he is also chairman of Moman. Hugh.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, also welcome on behalf of Moman. I'm standing here as the chairman of Moman, just to be very clear. And there's always a little bit of two hair wearing two caps, but in this case today I'm standing here as the chairman of Moman. I think in a world where the issues of the day sometimes take over, it's important sometimes to take a step back and look into the future. And that's all what is today about. Yeah, we all know all the challenges that we face today, and there are enough other meetings where we can discuss how we resolve that. But I think it's important that sometimes we take some time out and look into the future. And a future that, as Frank said, is important, because we need to look into the future, because otherwise we don't know where we're going. Yeah? Deregulation has happened. Yeah? Subsidy is gone. But there is a transition to be done towards that future. But if you don't know where you're going, and you don't know what you're aiming for, it's very difficult to charter a path towards it. So that's what today is about. Is what could that future look like? And we see glimpses of it today, as you just mentioned. And you can look around in the world to see those glimpses. There's an expression sometimes, it's better copied than badly designed yourself. Yeah? And there are many good examples in the rest of the world how you could actually copy certain things that actually could work in Nigeria. Being it a move into maybe CNG, being it a move into biofuels, being it a move into electrical vehicles, and whatever it is. And if you look at the stations in other countries, for those of you who don't know me, I'm from the Netherlands, or Holland as people call it. If you now go to certain retail stations, they'll have big charging sites for electrical vehicles that can actually charge an electrical vehicle in 20 minutes. Yeah? And while they are charging the vehicle, the people go to the Starbucks and have their cup of coffee. So, because certain people said the retail station is dead. Yeah? The electrical vehicles or hybrids will kill the retail station. It won't. People are still mobile. People still need to get from A to B. They'll still might need to charge up. The vehicle that does 1,000 miles has not yet been invented. But even if it would exist, people might make longer journeys. Or people live in an apartment building and can charge their vehicle. But if you give a service that is fast enough, people might come. Yeah? But it always goes in steps. Yeah? If you look at it, these things don't happen overnight. It might take a decade or sometimes a generation to fully explore. That's why so many countries have put their net zero targets somewhere around 2050. Because it takes a generation. It's also a change of human behavior and the things that we're used to. But in terms of energy use, and if we go back to Nigeria, I think it's important that we ensure the country is mobile. We need to make sure the country is mobile because that will deliver economic growth. Now, for that, you need energy. Today, this country is very much PMS focused, or in the commercial traffic, diesel focused. So what would the future look like? CNG, and the government is making some very clear statements around the CNG penetration. And I think it's very good, because Nigeria as a country is sitting on CNG. It's got it's the 8th biggest deposit of natural gas in the world. So why not use those minerals that you have for the use of your own economic development and to keep the people mobile? Yeah. So we'll see a development. So today we'll talk about that future. Not everything will be there tomorrow, yeah, but at least it will come. And if we don't start thinking about what we could do in the future, we don't know which steps we could do today to move to that direction. So I'm looking very much forward to today, all your contributions. I'll try not to say too much myself. It's a bad habit of me to sometimes say, but I'll try to be a little bit silent and be in listening mode. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. So to begin today, we're going to be hearing from one of our distinguished speakers, Dr. Zainab Gobir. She's Executive Director, Economic Regulations and Strategic Planning, NMDPRA. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. All protocol duly observed. I'm Professor Zainab Gobir with Nigeria Midstream Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, and I would like to just shed some light on this wonderful topic that we have going on now and commend the event managers for such a great dynamic platform to discuss energy-related issues. So Nigeria is right now transitioning right to gas. That's our biggest asset, which was said by the previous speaker. We're on number 8 in the world. And you now ask yourself, so what has government done about it? Government has two major policies already. One of it is DOG, that is Decade of Gas. The second one is Nigerian Gas Expansion Program, NGEP. And all these programs are designed to allow Nigerians adopt and receive the gas functionalities in the country. So in order to do this, the implementation team was put together and they're working assiduously to make sure that comes up in the rural areas of our country. Some of the most important things in regards to this wonderful topic, CNG, you have the electric vehicle, you have, of course, the natural gas, right, as a major element to use. So it's an exciting, will also bring a lot of contributions, and then all the hydrogens, right? Pink hydrogen, yellow hydrogen, the gray hydrogen. But these are the immense opportunities for the world. Tapping into this will bring a lot of employment growth for our nation. It will also bring in a lot of activity, investment, and regulators. So we do all we can in terms of policy and guidance to all oil and gas. Sure you have our support for this program, and I'll be online with you to watch and see, and learn all the dynamics of this wonderful.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Zainab Gobir. So our next speaker is Ms. Ejiro Gray. She is the Director of Governance and Sustainability, Sahara Group.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think this topic obviously is very timely and it's necessary for the discussion that it should be prevalent in our environment right now. Globally, there's been one key driver of exploring alternative energies, and we all know it as the energy transition, which is also driven by climate change. But in this part of the world, what you would observe is once you mention climate change, people just shut down and just like, please. Right. They see it as a Western problem. And that's because obviously there are other issues that are equally as important that are contending for our attention in this part of the world. So I think it's important that when we talk about these things, exploring alternative energies and all of that, we need to recontextualize it to what fits our environment. And why do I say that? In order to drive the discussion at the rate and at the level at which we need to drive it across the nation, we must put it in a way that people can relate to. So personally, if I were to discuss alternative energies and all of that and why it's so important, I wouldn't come from the angle of climate change. Whilst climate change is important, I will come from the angle of what are our pain points in this country and why is it necessary for us to address it. As a child, probably I was about 6 or 7, I shared a bunk bed with my sister. I'm sure we all know what a bunk bed is anyway. I shared a bunk bed with my sister, and for me, it served more than one use. Apart from sleeping, it was also my makeshift car because it was simple. The structure was there. The bed on top was the roof. The bed under was my seat, and I could easily demarcate front seat from back seat with pillows. Steering wheel was probably the cover or lid of a laundry basket or whatever, and I'm good to go. And something that was a repeated feature in my imagination was driving us somewhere, stopping on the way to buy petrol. So for as long as you can remember, every child knows that you need petrol to power your vehicle, to get you from point A to B. But over time, we've had issues around petrol, whether it's the subsidy issue, the forex issue, the scarcity issue, all of that. And what it then means is, time and time again, we're being controlled by markets and policies over which we have very little control and input. I live off Awolowo Road, and so that means that once there's a scarcity, all my exit points are by stations. So what typically should be a 5-minute drive to my office can sometimes take up to an hour, 45 minutes, 2 hours. It has happened. Extremely frustrating situation. So I'm not just contending with the fact that my petrol is burning because I'm stuck in that traffic, but also the fact that something that should be, I can see my house, like I can literally see the house, but I can't park in the middle of the traffic and then say I'm walking off. So I have to sit in there. So it's extremely frustrating. And I'm sure many of us, all of us in this room, have had one experience or the other with this. So I think it's not news that we need to find alternative solutions, whether it's the EVs, the electric vehicles, or auto gas and CNG, LPG, and all of that. Coincidentally, from about 2009 to 2014, I drove a hybrid vehicle. It was a company-branded vehicle. It was a Honda Civic. And it wasn't, at the time of purchase, it was purchased purely as a petrol-powered vehicle. But we wanted to test the hybrid potential of vehicles and LPG. And so we got this company from Italy to come into Nigeria and install the kits into the vehicles. And for that period of time, those years, whenever there was fuel scarcity, I was okay. Then I wasn't living off our road, so the issue of traffic was not really an issue for me yet. But I was okay because I knew I could rely on my LPG. And it was relatively cheaper. Now, with deregulation and all of that, of course, it's even much cheaper. The other day, I needed to fill my tank. I changed cars, and for the first time, I was going to fill the tank. I drove into the filling station. Of course, you know how it is when they bring in the car from the port and all that is already near empty and all that. And they started filling the tank. And I was watching the meter. And at the end of the day, how much did I pay for that fuel? About 57,000 naira. I was shocked. And I'm thinking, okay, for me, because I live close to the office, I will manage this fuel. I will drive very carefully, you know. But for people who have to, you know, their commute is much longer, mainland to island every day, how much are they spending on this fuel? And how sustainable is it? So we need to look at this from the perspective of the urgency of we need to address something that is extremely critical to our socioeconomic well-being as a nation. Now, the government has come up with policies to drive this, and I'm extremely pleased at that. I'm happy that we're finally doing something about it, because like Hugh said, we're sitting on gas. And at the end of the day, whether it's the EVs or the auto gas, it still boils down to utilizing our own resources responsibly and effectively. Because that's where the answer lies. Nobody's going to come and do it for us. And because, you know, over the years, the method and the model of resource exploitation has actually led us to where we are, these extractivist models, just remove, take out, without developing the value chain internally, is what has led us to this undesirable position where we're so reliant on markets we have no control over, and markets that are dictating to us that they're going the other way. So you will be left stranded if you're not careful. So if we don't develop our own resources and develop infrastructure for there to be an increase of demand in the use of the resources internally, domestically, then there's going to be a problem, which is why our domestic gas utilization policy is extremely important. It exists, but how do we implement it? Our body language for the government, even private sector, individuals, everything, the kind of deals and transactions we're entering into now, especially around gas, must also be reflective of that intentionality in prioritizing domestic gas utilization. Formulating policies has never really been an issue for us. To formulate policy is easy, but how do you implement effectively? The regulation as well. You develop regulation. How do you implement effectively, right? The issue tends to be that even in the process of formulating the policies, there's a tendency to formulate in isolation of other policies. We forget that every policy, every law will have interdependencies from other laws, other policies. And if they're not aligned, you then find a situation where different laws and policies and the enforcers are working at cross purposes. So at the end of the day, it's not effective. I remember a situation, because I used to be company secretary for Ikeja Electric. I remember a situation where we're trying to promote meter manufacturing, the metering program across Nigeria. And so, government came up with a very good policy, allowing, people to come up, meter manufacturers, bring in the meters, assemble them, and all of that, And a lot of people signed up for that, invested in it heavily, took out loans from the banks and all of that to drive that. And then what happened? The meters arrived at the port, and customs decides, oh, this is our chance. This is our opportunity. And then they hike up the tariff. So these meters are stuck at the port. They cannot be cleared because they didn't work out this sudden change from customs. It wasn't incorporated into the economics when they were negotiating the loans with the banks. So they're stuck with loans that they're having trouble servicing because they cannot clear the meters from the port and supply the end user, right? That was a very laudable policy that could have driven a lot of change and should drive a lot of change. But guess what? It was not in alignment with other policies that are dependent. The effectiveness of this policy is dependent on other policies such as the customs, the tariff, and all that. And so it's important that when we're looking at this policy, when we're formulating and implementing and mapping out a way, we must consider it holistically, 360 degrees. What are the other dependencies? So for alternative energies, for instance, what are the other dependencies? If you're driving EV, what are the dependencies? The electricity sector, how are you addressing the issues there? If it's auto gas, the gas sector, how are you addressing it? How are you ensuring that we are not prioritizing export over domestic use? Even though the returns from export obviously are more enticing and all of that, but are we considering our own development needs as a priority? Are we considering the fact that if we are not even prioritizing our development needs, the EVs, the auto gas vehicles and all of that, how affordable would they be to the end user? We must consider it to our last mile. How will they be able to afford it if things are dwindling socioeconomically? Whether it's a brand new car or used car. I mean, research has shown that in much of sub-Saharan Africa, of course, second-hand cars are more prevalent because of affordability. And so even the cost of conversion, buying the kit, installing it into your vehicle, it will cost nothing less than about 300,000 naira, 300 to 500,000 naira. Of course, with the exchange rate, you're also subject to that fluctuation. So that price will potentially continue to increase. So I think we need to look at it and address this issue from a point of priority for sustainability of our own socioeconomic development as a nation. Let's leave out climate change for now, and let's address it as an urgent need that Nigerians need to progress and to come out of hardship. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ejiro Gray. Another round of applause for her, please. So we're going to take presentations from industry groups. And the first here would be from Sam O. Falaye, the MD and Chairman CEO of SAGLEG International. He's going to be virtual. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope the audience can hear me. I'm going to be sharing my screen, but in the meantime, I want to express my greetings to the publisher, Business Day, the distinguished speakers, the individual industry presenters, and the panel discussion experts. So I will, let's see. I am sorry, just trying to share a screen here. I apologize. Some technical issues. I wonder if they do have my slides to try to actually share this. Excellent. Thank you so much. All right. So if we can put excellent. So once again, thank you for the opportunity. Our company is Saglev. We are just by way of introducing the company, we are an electric vehicle manufacturer. We are a company that deals only in battery electric vehicles. If we can have the next slide, please. Yes. So the company deals in only battery electric vehicles, 100%. We don't deal in internal combustion vehicles, hydrogen, or any other industry. We're a U.S. Delaware state incorporated company. We are focused in sub-Saharan Africa and strictly deal in the emerging markets, as well as some business modules in the United States. For the purpose of this, we're focusing on the primarily ride-hailing, commercial logistics fleets, and then personal vehicles as that develops. We do business in Nigeria as a Saglev Electromobility Nigeria Limited. Current state of commercialization for the company is that we have an assembly plant that is under construction, almost completed, and will be opening December 2023, beginning to assemble vehicles. And then we have another assembly plant, which is under construction, actually started prior to the Nigerian assembly plant, and will be opening December 2023. Let me please have the next slide. We have an entire lineup of vehicles. I'm not going to go through it, but we have a small hatchback, a mid-size sedan, luxury mid-size, luxury SUV, a luxury large sedan, ultra-luxury SUVs, the cargo, and then we have the buses, even up to the 50-seater luxury coaches. So we have a large lineup that all of this information can be looked at on our website. Let me have the next slide, please. Excellent. So it's important for us to point out that we are an electric vehicle manufacturer. However, we strongly believe that the right mix of energy sources is key. So we are not going to sit down here and say, well, everything is electric. It is important to understand that we 100% believe that every source of energy, every alternative mobility power source has its role, and they shine in different roles. So we always want people to understand this. While we're an electric vehicle company, we definitely are not telling anybody that electric is the only way. So this is very important guiding principle. Let me have the next slide, please. So there are certain challenges that we know about, and we've always talked about this. There's a challenge in EV charging infrastructure, the initial cost, the electricity supply. I come from the days when we mentioned NEPA. I know it's NERC now. Of course, the challenge of not having EV service personnel, and of course, with an EV, you're not going to have a reliable Tokumbo EV or used EV. And even if you find it, it is not advisable. It's a big risk to do that. So next slide, please. Yes. So what are the different alternative vehicles that are possible? The hydrocarbon fossil fuels, we have the PMS, the diesel, the natural gas, or even the propane gas, LPG, and then you have the biofuels. Of course, for zero emission, you have electric, hydrogen, and then you have all sorts of hybrid combination between electric and the hydrocarbon, different varieties. So these are the different alternatives that are available and will be available to Nigerians in different fashion. Yes, next slide, please. Excellent. I have this link, which I hope can be emailed to anybody that wants, and you can look at all the different pros and cons of all the different alternative fuels. I don't believe we have enough time to go through all of these, but this is a very important link to go through. Next slide, please. So what are the options for Nigeria? And again, these are all the different options that Nigeria has, all the way to hybrid vehicles. So next slide, please. Excellent. So some of the data that SAGLEV itself has collected that I wanted to point out. For a vehicle that is able to charge 300 kilometers, let's say on one ride-hailing car, it takes about 4 to 5 hours to charge that. It'll cost you about 3,375 naira. And I'm talking about naira. Now, most of the drivers that have been in our survey from all our data collection over the last 2.5 years in West Africa, in Nigeria and Ghana, the daily cost of power is about 2,227. And this is inclusive of the charger, the space for the charger, and the rental. For example, a typical Suzuki Espresso, to power that car with petrol today is 9,000 naira. Now, if you are using a Toyota Corolla, Camry, Honda Accord, or a GAC GA4, you'll be spending 14 to 20,000 naira a day. So this is the kind of remarkable change that we're looking at in terms of cost. Let me have the next slide, please. So just wanted to point another thing out about diesel. I think sometimes we have to explain things in ways that challenge us and confound us. If you have 100 diesel buses running for 15 hours, say in a city, say any city, in essence, what you're doing is you're actually running 100 diesel generators. Basically, that's what you're doing. Now, a 100 kVA generator is an excellent machine. If you look at the data of a US household, average United States home, it will be powered by 28.9 kilowatt hour over a 24-hour period. Therefore, a 100 kVA generator can power 25 to 50 US homes in 24 hours. This same amount can power 12 EV buses continuously over 24 hours. What that means is you can power essentially over 200 electric vehicle buses. So, over 1 hour charge, you can power an electric bus 250 to 300 kilometers per day. So this is the magic of what the electric vehicle ecosystem will give to you. Now, let us look at CNG. CNG is cheap. It's not always cheaper than gasoline. You need significant infrastructure to make CNG happen. There are infrastructure costs, which are very huge. There's a distribution cost. Of course, the CNG vehicle, the CNG fuel itself isn't exactly the most efficient power source. It actually runs a converted engine at a higher running temperature. The lifespan of the engine itself is reduced for this reason. Overall, a CNG vehicle versus a petrol diesel vehicle will be more expensive and they're less available. Next slide, please. So therefore, we're not saying that electric vehicles are the only solutions that we have, but we have to understand that electric vehicles are here. They are a very ready source, and the challenges we have had as a country that has had challenges with power are relatively overblown. So I've left these references for us to read, and hopefully, we can have some more time to discuss, and we'll be available for questions. And I have an email address if you can go to the next slide. Thank you very much. And there's an email address somewhere there, or you can reach out to us on our website and submit any questions. Again, thank you, Business Day, for allowing us to participate in this timely and wonderful discussion. And my greetings again go to all the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sam. Funny enough, he's dialing in from the US. He's sleeping now. It's crazy how, we're up all together trying to solve this problem in Nigeria. So thank you again. So our next industry speaker would be Dr. Henrietta Owingbuzi. She's the Associate Professor of Entrepreneurship, Lagos Business School.
Is she online?
Yeah, she is online as well.
or good morning. So good morning, everyone. And it's a pleasure to be with all of you. I'm not sure which image you're seeing now. I see one that is a bit faint. Okay. But yeah, okay. So I find today's talk, and thank you Business Day for the invitation. I found today's topic very relevant to what we're faced with, and I thought it would be a great idea to help us see that it's not all doom and gloom. If we approach the energy challenges we're faced with now with an entrepreneurial mindset, which means a problem-solving mindset, a mindset of continuous improvement. The first thing I'd like to say is that problems trigger innovations. So we're currently faced with a situation where we have, we're seeing the cost of energy, petrol, go up astronomically. And even what the poorest of the poor used to use, kerosene, is now even more expensive than petrol, which is what the rich or middle class use. And so the question is, what can be done? And a lot can be done. Okay. So what I'd first of all like to show you
I decided to build an electric motorbike that will help disabled people whenever they are going somewhere. You don't need your legs to do something, or you just have to on it and it will take you to wherever you want to go. My name is Samuel Abwaje and I'm a 17-year-old boy. Just complete my JSS 3. The motor I used to make the electric motorbike is, the volt is 12 volts. And the solar panel is also 12 volts, and also the battery is also 12 volts. It lasts for about 5 hours or so because of the solar panel. So it can run about 20 miles. This is the power button that controls the bike, and this is the controller for the music. This is my bell to signal people when I'm on the road. And this is my brake, and this is a slot for charging charged by electricity when I don't want to use the solar panel to charge. And this is the switch for backlight and the front light. And this is the media player. You can use pen drive to play or SD card. And this is my backlight. And this is the solar panel used to charge the main battery. The motorbike took me about 2 months to build it. And the electric tricycle also took me about 6 months to build it. I spent about 300 Ghana cedi to complete the motorcycle. I used wood because that was the available material. I want to build more of it, this electric bike, to distribute to disabled people, but I don't have the money. I need the financial support with education and the material that I will use. Right now my scooter, it has 1 speed, but I'm now on another project to build the one that will offer you with a gear, and you can increase the speed and you can also go reverse. Even though my electric motor is made with wood, but it can carry 2 people or someone who is bigger than me. It's very strong. I love science, and anytime the science lesson ends, I'll go and take my notes and revise it to able to make something. Now I'm planning to build an electric car that also run on a solar panel and also a motor.
Look at this Nigeria-made electric vehicle by EMVC. It's plenty. Come with me, let me show you. Its name is Olori. In every kind of business you do, you need this cargo vehicle. Be it a water factory, bakery, building materials, food and beverages, restaurants, supermarket, even for dispatch and so on. It is completely electric, and this saves your money because you don't need to buy fuel. Just imagine how much you spend on fuel every month. And guess what? To charge it is very simple. This is the charger. Just plug the charger to your wall socket, just like the way you charge your phone. Here is the charging port. It has a double battery system, which means you can swap the batteries. You can swap from battery A to battery B, and each battery can run 300 kilometers on full charge. Lagos to Ibadan, Ibadan to Oyo, Port Harcourt, Osu, everywhere to, Guess what? You don't need a mechanic. No carburetor, no oil, no fuel. Nothing to fix. Just charge and drive. Vroom! Don't worry about maintenance. All the product comes with 1 year free maintenance and 5 years warranty is plenty. Stop playing. And it is very easy to use. Just put on the ignition. Then accelerate. We are good to go. Take a look at this fish. Push it like this. You go front. Push it to the other way. You can reverse. It's plenty.
alternative power sources. Caroline, could you just share that last video before I...
This guy is the Elon Musk of Nigeria, and he's about to become a billionaire. He's turning vehicles that uses fuel into vehicles that now operate only on electricity.
Hi, my name is Eze, and I turn vehicles that use fuel into vehicles that use only electricity. And I believe this is the future.
Believe you can make more than 20 billion naira from this?
Yes.
And this is your idea?
Yes.
Tell me, how did this all begin?
Well, it started from while I was still in the university as an undergraduate. I was studying the works of Tesla and the vast transition into electric mobility globally. And then in my final year in the university, we had this project where a team of engineering students, we came together under the tutelage of Professor Zemenani, and then we built an electric vehicle from scratch then. So
which university?
The University of Nigeria, Nsukka. So the kind of attention we got then kind of exposed me more into the potentials that lie ahead. And then I started seeing opportunities where young people who drive vehicles commercially can actually save costs in operation by using electric vehicles, because they cost much less to operate and then much less to maintain.
So how far have you come with this project?
Well, so far we have successfully completed our kit, a kit that we can use to convert one vehicle that is powered by fuel gasoline engine to one that is powered by full battery electricity.
How many of those vehicles do you have running in Enugu State at the moment?
We currently have about 5, and we are working on our minibus model already.
Okay, do you have investors at the moment?
Yes, we have a number of investors, people who believed in us from the very beginning.
Okay, and with the way people are going, do you think you'll be able to achieve the vision you have for this?
Yes, very much. I work with a team of very visionary people who see the future of not just the renewable energy industry in the world, but the energy industry in Nigeria particularly, and in the whole of Africa. We believe that this is a beginning of the transformation of Africa into a global economy.
Oh, this is really impressive. Can you show us how this works?
This is one of our vehicles, and then what you have here is the battery. The whole thing here is the battery, and then underneath it is the engine. So, but then this is a test model. We could have our batteries under the seats of this vehicle.
Can you put it on?
Yes. One of the most obvious advantages of this is it has absolutely no noise and absolutely no emissions. It doesn't have any combustion system, and it's much less to operate compared to the regular gasoline vehicles. It is also much easier to drive. It's a get in and go vehicle. It has places where you can plug in, passengers can plug in phones to charge. It has places where, yes, right here. So another advantage is you can actually hook up this vehicle to your house to power your house.
So the reason I'm showing all these videos is so that we don't really think that as we speak about these alternative power sources, we think it's rocket science, it's going to be expensive, impossible to do. We start focusing on all the challenges in Nigeria. So I think that the most attractive part of it is to see that those who are actually working on these alternatives are not wealthy people, they're young people. And I think that what they really need is the support of corporate Nigeria investors, to really see how we can begin to improve on these prototypes and begin to scale them, okay? Because, and also scale the variety of applications that can be used. It's the same way the fintech industry has really, gone way ahead of the systems we see both in Europe and America, because it's funny that the alerts we get in Nigeria, which we take for granted, and our ability to transfer money within seconds is not available in any of these more economically advanced places. So there is room for innovation. So just to leave us with a few ideas as to, how we can apply this mindset to different areas. I'm hoping I can share my slide. I didn't share these slides with Caroline earlier. Let's see if I manage. I hope I have the permission to share slides. Yes. Okay, share screen. Let's see. So I just will share one or two slides to help us understand a few principles that should guide the way we as individuals or as corporate organizations can survive the different economic downturns that we face. Looks like it's very heavy for this. I'm trying to go to full screen, but it's rolling. But just to save time, I'll just quickly explain what you're seeing until it's able to allow me go to slideshow. So basically, I'm trying to relate an entrepreneurship mindset to economic development, because many times what we see is this first line where we have problems, pain points, poverty, market inefficiency, which means that you have surplus in some areas and scarcity in other areas, as we have especially with agricultural produce, where we find that we have a lot of wastage, in the rural areas, and then in the cities there's scarcity and there's high cost of these foodstuffs due to logistics problems, infrastructure problems. And if we look beyond the problems and pain points, okay, we should be seeing ideas and opportunities to create solutions that people will be willing to pay for. And this is how businesses are born, okay? And this is how solutions are born. So for instance, there are young people who have developed mobile cold storage rooms that they can take to, clusters of farmers. And of course, they're being paid. Or alternatively, what they can do is, buy the things from the farmers at a lower price because of the storage facilities they're providing. And then when they sell, they're able to pay these farmers. So these are business models, or the sort of people, the people in the power sector who are selling solar power to people in rural areas without asking them to pay for the full cost. They just pay a fixed amount every week or every month for a number of years. And then they go smiling to the bank, while the users, the customers also smile because they have the power that they need to continue with their normal personal operations or business operations. So all these problems actually, as I said before, trigger innovations. They trigger markets creating innovations, which are also solutions to people's problems. And, okay, it's closed the window, but basically, this is how businesses are formed. These same businesses, I don't know why it stopped screen sharing. Let me try again. These same businesses offer solutions to offer jobs, okay? And of course, as people get jobs and they get paid, it alleviates poverty, okay? They're able to create okay, so this will now show as it should. Okay, so these solutions that they create businesses that create jobs. And of course, when you create jobs, what happens? You alleviate poverty, you also create wealth for the business. And because both the workers and the businesses make money, there's shared prosperity. Now, what's the impact of shared prosperity on the population? When people have financial independence, they grow a voice. The worst part of poverty is voicelessness. And that's why you find in many developing countries there's impunity, because most people don't have the courage to speak because of their situation. I mean, a country like France, if a business official travels business class, the whole population is up in arms because they are aware and they feel you've used their money for personal, pleasure. And so there's a lot of a call for accountability. So at the end of the day, when we're seeking to create shared prosperity amongst the population, we actually have a population that will compel government to accountability. It's very difficult to have that in Nigeria until, accountability until the higher percentage of the population is financially independent. Okay, and accountability means that we build institutions that are independent of government and challenge things that don't look, that are not right, and reduce, of course, corruption as a result. So, and when you have these institutions and a government that is accountable, automatically the ecosystem for businesses improve. And more people are encouraged to go into business. I'm not saying we have to wait for the perfect situation, because that is an utopia. There's no place in the world where there's a perfect situation, but we can work towards it. we create a more enabling environment for businesses to thrive. And as a result of that, we end up with, because if there are more businesses employing more people, there are more jobs, there are more solutions in society, we have a more sustainable socio-economic development. Note here that I included not just economic development, but socio-economic, because what we don't want, the situation where the economy improves, but people's lives have not improved, which is something that has existed in Nigeria for quite some time, especially in 2012, where we were ranking amongst the fastest growing economies in the world, but poverty was still increasing. Okay, so we have to look for a system that allows for both to happen. And it starts with the entrepreneurial mindset, which is a mindset of problem solving and continuous improvement. And we just saw 3 examples of how that can be triggered in response to the challenges that are faced. And these are mainly due to the action of entrepreneurs. Now, I always try to remind people that the entrepreneurial mindset is not about just starting a business. Even in paid employment, one can have an entrepreneurial mindset, because businesses are built to make money from solving problems or providing solutions that people are willing to pay for. And it's only when those involved in that business those employed in that business have an entrepreneurial mindset that they can produce those goods and services that people are willing to pay for. Okay, so at any point in time, if we have this mindset, our businesses will thrive. So it starts with an idea to solve problems, for a relevant target market. Of course, we test the idea through a feasibility study, and then once we confirm that people are willing to pay for it, we discover that we have a business opportunity. The next thing that should follow is how we organize ourselves to have efficient operations. This is where we do our business plan to see how we can organize our operations and ensure that we have a system that is encouraging for staff, because only happy staff can give you happy customers who are satisfied. And if your customers are happy with what they're being provided with, the next thing you have is, profitability in a sustainable way. So just to keep in mind that, at the end of the day, we actually should see the flip. Under every cloud, there's a silver lining. Okay, so if we're saying that we are challenged now with the fact that, it's crazy to think that we're an oil-producing country and we have this challenge. Well, it's where we find ourselves. So the question is, how do we tackle it? Okay, so I think it's important that we go from being necessity-driven entrepreneurs who just focus on survival, and move from also the situation of being profit-focused entrepreneurs who only focus on personal wealth. And many times when we're solely profit-focused, we don't contribute much to the economy. We are just thinking about problems. To impact-driven entrepreneurs who see business as a tool to transform society. And we just saw 3 examples of people who are thinking in terms of making money for making a difference. They're making a difference, but you can be sure that they will make a lot of money in the process. And this is really the mindset that will not only transform our business, but will also transform Africa. And these are the kind of entrepreneurs that Africa needs. So I think I'll just stop here and probably take questions if there's time for that, or maybe the next speaker will take over from here. Thank you.
Lagos State government said they wanted to do EV, and the question I asked is, the entire Lagos State has less than 1,000 megawatts. How do you power EV? Are you going to power it with diesel generators? If you're going to power it with diesel generators, are you not going back to the same cycle? Dangote is going to do 435 megawatts. It's most likely going to power with LPFO or lighter refinery gases when it starts. of course, is going to be using like a third of it and then delivering the next day remaining to the grid. So the question comes back to, if you're not doing solar and you're doing electric vehicle, which is one of the options, how do you power the batteries? You come back to thermal plants. In the north, there is a problem with infrastructure for delivering gas. We all know AKK has a problem. Ajaokuta to Abuja delivered, Abuja to Kaduna not delivered, Kaduna to Kano currently ongoing. Inflation of the cost of EPC in the FID. The foreign partners pulled out. They don't have funding to finish the project. And hydropower plants are seasonal because it's rainy season, it's dry season. So at the end of the day, it comes back to gas. And I always say, Nigeria is more of a gas nation than it is an oil nation. It's interesting, every day we're keeping tabs and monitoring. Oh, how much crude oil did you produce per day? How much was stolen? How much are they exporting? And no one is talking about gas. Nigeria practically has its focus. They upstream, they have their focus on associated gas, nothing about condensate. No gas fields. Everybody is just focused on, 700 million standard cubic feet of gas that is flared, 30 billion standard cubic feet of gas that is produced, 1.1 billion goes to NLNG, less than 500 million standard cubic feet goes to the pipes, and that is what we're talking about using to do our, pipe natural gas, gas to city gates to, compress for CNG. And now, what is interesting to me? The government has started talking about CNG. Everyone is excited. CNG, CNG, CNG. The government has come out with a wish list. I call it a wish list because, in my opinion, there's no infrastructure to power the wish list. And nobody is talking about infrastructure. The Minister of Petroleum, State for Petroleum, NNPC, GCO, you're not talking about infrastructure to power the CNG. The entire Southeast does not have any high transmission pipe. Nothing. The entire Southeast as a region in Nigeria, there was, if you check the National Gas Policy of 2017, there is like a plan for Aba, Owerri, Nnewi, Onitsha, 151 kilometers, nothing. It's not even gone into FID. Nothing. North, AKK has been there since how long? How do you power CNG if you can't deliver gas through pipes to city gates for you to depressurize into mother and daughter stations? You can't power CNG. It's just talk. You can't truck CNG from River State to beyond Abuja. Anything more than 500 kilometers, it doesn't go. How do you, do LCNG and take LNG from the south and take it all the way to the north and set up a regasification plant to convert it back so you can use to do CNG? The cost doesn't make sense. So the question I asked myself when I was given this invitation to speak was, what does it come down to? It comes down to gas. And it's a conversation we don't often have. And even when we have, it's always on the surface level. And even for the height of policy making, where you expect that there is supposed to be a focus on the infrastructure, because everything boils down to infrastructure. There isn't much focus on the infrastructure, and everybody is concerned about oil, oil, oil. Sorry, slides. Okay. How do I use it? Okay. Where do I press to? Okay, next. Okay. So I just wanted to do like a brief talk about the economy, and then I will go into my presentation on gas and how I think there is the value chain right from the wellheads to the gas gathering pipes to the manifolds to the treatment and processing plants to the high pressure transmission pipes down to the city gates and then to distribution. we all know what the issues are with the economy. Deficit financing is 43.8%. In this 2023 budget that they practically cannot implement, 7.5 trillion naira in loan. No one is going to borrow you money. You were supposed to pay 7.2 trillion in subsidies. Luckily, the president had the gusto to remove petrol subsidy. Yep. And you have that deficit financing go all the way from 16%, it went to 43.8%. Your government revenue to debt servicing is over 100%. And you have oil and gas to GDP ratio of somewhere around 8%, non-oil and gas to tax to GDP ratio somewhere around 10.6%. And when I look at Nigeria and I look at Qatar, Qatar did $65 billion in revenue last year from gas. Qatar is at 77 million metric tons. Nigeria, NLNG says that they are unable to do 22 million metric tons because vandalization and crude oil theft restricts the ability to deliver gas through gas gathering pipes to their terminal for treatment, separation, and processing into C1, C2, C3, C4. You have methane, you have ethane, you have propane, you have isobutane. But the most attention is on methane because that's what you liquefy into LNG, yeah? And I ask myself, why do we have so much potential but no action? Why are we sitting on so much gas, like Mr. Agbogun said and Hope said when he was speaking, and we're struggling to raise revenues? NNPC is currently talking to Afrexim about doing a resource-backed loan of $30 billion when you have so much gas. How do you reinvent the economy? But reinventing the economy is a topic for another day. It's not what I'm going to be discussing today. I'm just trying to let us know that as we look for solutions to reinvent our energy dependencies, like the distinguished lady from Sahara said, we need to realize that gas is going to save the economy. So NNPC is doing revalidation studies. They finished that, they're doing engineering design for NMGP. And you have less than 500 million standard cubic feet of gas that goes through your pipes. And the question I have for NNPC and the Moroccan government is, even if you're able to get funding to build the infrastructure, how do you get the gas to flow through the pipes without investing in the up and midstream to pipe the gas through 13 West African countries to Morocco, the city gate there? So if you look at this map of proven reserves around the world, Nigeria has 2.7% of proven reserves globally. I was explaining, basically like a chart of the fact that where we were in 2015, we've even dropped. In 2015, we're doing 30 billion standard cubic feet. We've dropped because of crude oil theft and vandalization, hot pressure tapping on the pipes. We've dropped. NLNG, converting C1 methane into LNG, they were doing about, I think 2014, they returned $2.7 billion in dividends to the Nigerian government, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't have the exact figures on how much CIT and withholding taxes they paid off the top of my head, but they dropped. This past financial year, they did $1.1 billion and about $700 million in CIT, about 256 in withholding taxes. It dropped. Okay. NLNG processes your natural gas into C1, methane, C2, ethane. So you have propane, then you have isobutane. Propane is not used as much in Nigeria because propane is used mostly in temperate countries. What you use in Nigeria for your LPG is isobutane. So you export propane, and then you import isobutane. So you have the issues with bulk storage terminals. You have less than 50,000 metric tons of throughput. It's a cartel in Nigeria. If you want to import isobutane to Nigeria now, and you go to Apapa, those guys will tell you about 9 or 10 of them. They'll tell you that they're not giving you their throughput. You have to build your own. So the fact that you don't have midstream infrastructure for piping gas from terminals to city gates is the reason why you build bulk storage terminals to store isobutane and propane. So if we're even going to talk about cars that are powered by LPG, in South Korea you have cars that are powered by LPG. The question you have to ask yourself is, with isobutane, with LPG at 1,200 naira per kg today in Nigeria, does it really make sense to use LPG as a cheaper alternative to petrol? By the way, LPG has a lower energy density than methane gas. Does it make sense? And I expect it to continue to go up to at least 1,004. Various factors: exchange rates, throughputs, it's winter, seasonal cyclical changes in price, the cost of shipping, the handling cost to deliver LPG, isobutane to Nigeria. And I always ask myself, I'm sorry, Hob, I have to talk about NNPC a bit. I always ask myself, what is the role of NNPC? Why are they there? Why is NNPC not investing in midstream infrastructure for processing gas and building those splitter units into those processing plants to convert propane into butane, to reduce how much of butane you import into Nigeria so that the shocks in price will not be what you see today? These are the technical questions we have to ask ourselves. If you're going to diversify your energy mix and reduce the shocks and volatility that has come from deregulating PMS, we have to ask ourselves these serious questions about gas. The devil is in the details. We don't talk about the details enough. The presidency keeps talking about CNG. I'm sorry, there's no plan for it. How do you want to create CNG vehicles in the southeast and then truck CNG from Port Harcourt, from River State, to Owerri, to Inewi, or to Aba? NDPHC has a gas gathering point at Aloji. They have another one in Aba. But there is no FID to power pipe to distribute, to send that gas, transport that gas from Aba down through the southeast to Enugu, to Owerri, to Inewi, to Onitsha. So are you telling me that you're going to do CNG vehicles, you're going to buy auto compression kits and convert your internal combustion engines, your petrol vehicles into CNG, and then truck CNG from River State to Onitsha or to Owerri? Is that the plan? That's the plan? Does it make sense? So we talk about it, CNG. There's just the fact, like, Doc, to get people excited. Oh, but what's the plan? How do you increase the output for gas? How do you increase it? I saw, I think it was last year, the MD of NLNG was speaking, and he said that they have force measures on their contracts, on their forward contracts, and they're not able to deliver up to 22 million metric tons, so they're losing revenues. Yeah, and because of that, they are not able to meet up with the targets. And he said that, look, for Train 7 to be fully maximized and for Train 8 to be developed, they need to have policy clearance, policy clarity in line with PIA to go offshore for associated gas. What's the plan for the government to invest in gas fields, condensates? What's the plan? There's no plan. The Minister of State for Petroleum is not talking about it. Instead, he's going to Port Harcourt refinery and to promise Nigerians that Port Harcourt refinery is going to be back after how many years? You need policy coordination and political will to increase the amount of gas that is trapped from wellheads, the amount of investment that goes into developing actual gas fields to supply through those gas gathering pipes to manifolds that will deliver through your pipes. Is a value chain, is a supply chain. You can't neglect one and expect that the other is going to work. It's not going to work. You need investments in that midstream to develop pipeline infrastructure around Nigeria. Currently, there is less than 2,000 kilometers of pipeline infrastructure. I told you, I said the entire Southeast does not have any pipeline infrastructure. Okay, AKK is where it is. OB3, 127 kilometers, Obiafu, Obricom, Oben, is not completed. Okay? So you need investment. Internal, for any talk about CNG to work, for any talk about EV to work, you need investments in gas, because the generating companies that generate light through those thermal plants, they need gas to work. Transcorp is complaining about gas in the North Central. You need gas to work. The hydro plants in the north, in the northeast, and northwest, they need gas. They can't rely on water because water is seasonal. So basically, I talked about as a 2020, the amount of gas that was reinjected, not used, the amount of gas that is in the market, the amount of gas that NLNG was able to convert into LNG and then into the C+ gases, propane, mostly propane that they export, and the amount of gas that was fled, 7% of it was fled. In closing my presentation, I want to challenge us, because this is a roundtable of industry experts and decision makers. I want to challenge us. Mr. Hobb is here. I want to challenge us to realize that crude oil is still around, but over time, the dependency on crude oil will reduce. Gas is a transition fuel. At the G7 meeting in Hiroshima, they had a communique where they agreed to step down the restrictions on gas and allow for more time with natural gas as a transition fuel. Natural gas that they flare, natural gas that is not talked about, is the key to increasing electricity generation in Nigeria. Listen, if you increase the output for electricity in Nigeria, you reduce the daily consumption of PMS in Nigeria. You reduce the daily consumption of diesel in Nigeria. The electricity that will be generated is the key to increasing the adoption of electric vehicles in Nigeria. Without electricity, you cannot power EV, because you cannot use diesel to turn on a diesel generator and charge your battery to drive your car. So it's important that policy focuses on the pain points, from trapping gas, developing gas fields, to the gas gathering pipes, to the separation and treatment plants, to the high pressure transmission pipes, to the city gates, and then to the distribution points. If you neglect all of this process I mentioned, you can't come to the final point of distributing gas to the mother and daughter stations where you convert it into CNG. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kelvin Emmanuel, for that presentation. So, would also go online to join Prince Mustafa Audu. He's the CEO of Electric Motor Vehicle Company, who will be giving us a short presentation.
Hi, good afternoon. I hope you can hear me now. Thank you. Um, I'm so sorry. I'm supposed to be there right now, but we're stuck and I've had to find a little corner office at the airport to be able to do this without the noise. So apologies once again. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Prince Mustafa Audu. I am the CEO of Electric Motor Vehicle Company, EMVC. We are an electric vehicle company making electric vehicles and other solutions in the electric vehicle supply chain. So basically, we have a presentation, and I don't know if the presentation is up on the board. If Caroline, please, you can help me with the presentation. Perfect. Thank you. Exploring alternative energies in Nigeria, fostering the adoption of electric vehicles. Basically, we're trying to see how we can move this to the next stage and have the public and the government and other stakeholders participate in the EV sector. Next page, please. So the agenda of this brief presentation, introduction to Nigeria's energy landscape to understand what we have right now, the need for alternative energies, potential benefits of EVs in Nigeria, challenges and opportunities, government initiatives and policies, and then conclusion and next steps. So off to the introduction. Obviously, as the world moves towards dealing with the consequences, the negative consequences of greenhouse gases, pollutions, fossil fuel consumption, alternative energy is the way forward, and it's gaining momentum around the world. Most countries right now are gearing their economy, their investment technology towards obviously sustainable energy. Nigeria as a country right now is heavily reliant on fossil fuels. Majority of what we're focusing on has always been fossil fuel, but recently we've been making efforts toward diversifying the energy mix and to obviously reduce the carbon footprint, which would have great effects on our economy and the environment. So the current energy landscape, obviously we generate power through hydro, through gas, which are the basic fossil fuel methods, diesel. In addition, lately we focused on renewable energy. Nigeria has been focusing on renewable energy, such as solar especially. A lot have been looking into wind technology as well. This will help booster the landscape for EVs. So Nigeria predominantly relies on fossil fuels, particularly petroleum products, as our primary source of energy, especially transportation. And as we know, the transportation sector is the highest polluting sector in Africa, causing over 70% of greenhouse gas pollution. This heavy dependence on fossil fuel poses, of course, several challenges such as environmental degradation, air pollution, energy security concerns. By shifting towards alternative energy, specifically electric vehicles, Nigeria can reduce its reliance on fossil fuels while promoting sustainable development. We all know right now, subsidy has been reduced, so it has tripled the cost of transportation. And electric vehicles is a way also for cushioning the effects of subsidy removal. If we can go down, please. Next. Yes, the need for alternative energies. Of course, environmental concerns, climate change, and a lot of people don't understand, but there's a direct correlation between climate change and terrorism. If you look at areas such as the Lake Chad Basin, which was filled with water before, it's now a lot of it has faced desertification. So a lot of new land has been created, which obviously has not been monitored or is unable to be monitored by government or the security agencies. And then people move in there, people with nefarious activities move in there and use those areas as hideouts. In addition, people that used to do fish farming, reg their cattle, find the water as a source of livelihood or even survival, can no longer do that in those areas simply because the lake has dried up. If you move over to the south, degradation, if you look at the effects of the mangroves, if you look at the oil spillage, all of these environmental disasters are causing people in the Niger Delta to look for alternative means of survival. And young people usually turn to crime and terrorism, which is the easiest way for them to look for resources. So climate change is directly correlates. And if you look at the Middle Belt, for example, we hear a lot about the clashes between the farmers and the herders. The clashes between the farmers and the herders are simply because new routes are being sourced, because the areas where the herders that used to move with their cattle before used to ply with their cattle has dried up. So they have to find new areas moving through farmlands. Also, farmlands are expanding into routes that were previously carried out by cattle. So you can see that the effect of climate change is essential towards the security of our nation. Therefore, finding alternative sources of energy and transportation is extremely important. Also, it causes depletion of our fossil fuel, and then we would need to reduce our dependency on imported oil, because even though we still export crude oil, we import most of the basic products that we use, the PMS, the diesel, the jet fuel. Next slide, please. So the benefits of electric vehicles in Nigeria. The picture shows one of our models of electric vehicles. That is the Adoja. Please, if you can scroll back up a little with the car. That is our Adoja. We have 4 ranges of electric vehicles. We have our Olori 1 and Olori 2, which are 3-wheel cargo vehicles. We have the Igwe, which is our version of the Keke Napep, but it has doors, windows, air conditioning, reverse camera, Bluetooth. Then we have our 4-wheel vehicle, which is the picture that you can see here, which is the Adoja. This is meant towards targeting last mile solutions such as Uber, Bolt. So this helps to reduce the level of unemployment in the country. This also helps to cushion the effects of fuel subsidy, as maintenance and running cost of electric vehicles are much, much, much lower, less than 10% of what you have, especially the type of electric vehicles we make that have maybe 4 or 5 components. Apart from the rickshaw, apart from the body, there are only 4 components, which is the battery itself, the lithium-ion battery, which powers the vehicle, the controller, which makes it move as fast as, faster or decelerates. Then, of course, the inverter, which inverts the power from the battery, and of course, the electric motor. So these are the 4 components. So they're very easy, as opposed to an ICE vehicle where you have thousands of components trying to work together to make your vehicle work. Please, let's move down. So the benefits of electric vehicles are tremendous: creation of new jobs, creation of employment, technology transfer, environmental benefit, reduction in degradation of our environment, energy and security, energy security and economic diversification by focusing on solar, on different kinds of energy to complement the EVs. The gentleman that was speaking before did mention that developing the gas infrastructure is essential for EVs. He's correct in a sense, simply because you need that energy. But the great thing about electric vehicles is that you can also use solar. So we have battery libraries, which are like the Amazon cabinets. They have 16 compartments that our batteries go into, connected to solar panels. So this can charge. We run battery as a business. So if you don't charge your battery at home, you can simply drive to our closest battery charging center and do a battery swap in less than 30 seconds. You can swap your battery and drive off for a fee. So EVs create alternative revenue sources. It creates new jobs. It reduces our dependency on fossil fuels. The technological advancement, it gives the young people a great vision, a great hope for the future, simply because they can diversify, create new skills. Right now, we've trained over 300 people in the country, different locations, on how to fix, maintain electric vehicles, on assembly, on editing, doing some of the work on the technology, on the software. So we've created a lot of opportunities, and we're one of very few companies in the EV sector. So if government were to invest heavily in this sector, as opposed to other means of fuel subsidy, for example, then the potential of where it would have reached by now would have been tremendous. Next slide, please. So we look at the challenges and opportunities that we face in the sector. So challenges, limited charging infrastructure, obviously, limited public awareness and misconception. Most people think that because it's an electric vehicle, you need constant supply of electricity to make it function, but that's not the case. It's simply like having a phone. You charge your phone wherever you get your energy source from, or when you're that people don't understand that it's possible for you to have an electric vehicle and function normally as efficient as others will function. But obviously, we need to invest, government needs to invest. And then there's also the drawback of the high procurement cost. The upfront cost is usually slightly higher than the upfront cost of an ICE vehicle, but the maintenance over a period of time is much more. So the opportunities, obviously, there's opportunities for investment and innovation, collaboration between private sectors, government, and NGOs. Just before the conclusion, if you can just scroll up, let me just talk about the government initiatives and policies, because it's extremely important. Obviously, the policies in terms of regulatory framework, shipping, bringing in goods, duty, taxes, these incentives can help to booster the EV sector, because it's important that we grow the sector. Research and development, investment in that is very important. I know that the National Automotive Design Development Council, NADDC, headed by Jelani Aliyu, is doing a tremendous job in trying to bring awareness and government attention towards developing the EV sector. But it is critical that Nigeria develops it, simply because the world is turning towards EV. The United Kingdom, Europe have all said 2030, 2025, 2030, and 2035 for stopping production, stopping sales. And by 2035, there will be no more production of ICE vehicles, which are internally combustion engine vehicles. But what happens to all those vehicles? They come to Nigeria, they come to Africa. Africa now becomes the dumping ground for all these vehicles. So if Africa doesn't take the lead, if Nigeria doesn't take the lead, because you're not solving the problem by moving it from Europe or the US to Africa, you're just moving the problem from point A to point B. So Africa has to find a way of responding. So in conclusion, we're making a shift towards alternative fuels in Nigeria, or making a shift towards alternative fuels in Nigeria, is essential for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, mitigating climate change impacts, and enhancing energy security. In addition, you can raise tremendous amount of funding from carbon credits, which is very important, through a comprehensive policy intervention as well. This includes financial incentives, infrastructure development, research and development, public awareness campaigns, and regulatory framework. Nigeria can leapfrog Africa and be the leader in EV manufacturing, because there is a global demand, there is an African demand, and there is a Nigerian demand for EVs, but it has to be handled as a collective. Nigeria can accelerate the adoption of alternative fuels and position itself as a leader in sustainable energy solutions by implementing these measures. Nigerians can diversify its energy mix, reduce its dependence on fossil fuels, and promote a green and resilient future for our nation. Just to conclude, this is the only nation we have. We must build the nation in the way that serves future generations. And the only way to do that is to invest heavily in alternative sources of energy. Without energy, Africa cannot develop. Without energy, Nigeria cannot develop and grow to where we know that Nigeria can grow to. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here with all of you. Thank you. And of course, you can visit us at our email address. You can check out our website, Electric Motor Vehicle Company, or emvc.org. You can email us, and my name is Prince Mustafa Audu once again. Thank you for listening to this presentation, and we look forward to hearing back from you. And we look forward to you patronizing us and using one of our electric vehicles soonest. Thank you very much, and have a splendid day.
Bank, please. And then Mr. Daniel Iyo, he will be representing Chimabi Onuigbo, who is the head commercial at Dover for Venture and Renewables. And then Mr. Agu Ojowood, senior consultant, African practice. Last on the list, not last, but Mr. Idowu Suleiman, solar business developer, commercial and industry, Total Energy, marketing Nigeria. Over to you, Dipo.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and it's a pleasant. Glad to see everyone's faces, and good to be here again as well. So we are going to be having a conversation on alternative energy, talking about oh, okay. Sorry, just a minute. Okay, yeah, you can.
Apologies. I'd like to invite Mr. Olufisayo Duduyemi. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so we're good to go. Once again, good morning, everyone, and we are going to be having a conversation on alternative energy, basically talking about where we are now and how can we move from the point where we are now to the next point. Now, alternative energy is not a local conversation; it's an international conversation. Countries around the world have. Okay, so it's not a local race. It's a journey. A lot of countries in the global scene they've started many years ago, and Nigeria is currently on that quest as well. And so, we would like to know how we can move from the point where we are now, not just in terms of infrastructure, like one of the speakers have mentioned, in terms of investments, in terms of scale, in terms of size, and also in terms of opportunities as well. And so, we have a rich list of panelists here. We have someone from Sterling Bank, we have A2 Energy, we have Axela, we have Adova as well, we have Total Energy. So we'll basically be dissecting some of the topical issues in the sectors. And then there'll be room for questions as well. We would have 1 or 2 questions just to get feedback from some of the things they've said as well. So I'd like to talk to Mr. Idowu Suleiman first. You're with Total Energy. I would like to get your view about Nigeria's alternative energy, where we are now, and what's your view about the journey we've started so far?
Okay, thank you for having me here. On the Nigeria renewable energy development, today we have a lot of resources in terms of solar. We have a capacity of up to like 427 gigawatts opportunity in solar, both solar thermal and solar PV. And in terms of wind, yes, it's very, very little. We have the average wind speed in Nigeria is about 3 meters per second, and there's not enough for commercial large-scale deployment. But recently I have a discussion with one professor in Covenant University where we can actually use that little capacity to develop
hydrogen in deep offshore. So in terms of biomass, we have we have annual production of more than 200,000 tons of animal waste being generated every year. And this can actually develop about 8 to 7 gigawatts that is being wasted every year. So we are not tapping into it. Yes, we have a lot of hydro that have been part of us. And we still have some mini hydro and micro hydros that we can actually develop across the country, both in the north, west, south. Everywhere you have the mini hydro facility. But in terms of what we are doing today, yes, it's a journey that we just started. If you look at the energy transition plan of the country that was launched last year, we need about 410 billion USD by 2060 to achieve that plan. And for the first year, which is this year, we need about $10 billion. If you look at the current revenue from the government, we can't achieve that. It means we need private sector to drive the energy transition plan. And that's where Total is also coming in. Today, we are majorly developers, project developers. We've developed about 6 megawatt, although it's very small. And we have a lot of pipelines of projects to also do. And in terms of the grid-connected systems, we have some other companies that are coming up on board. Today, we have only just one grid-connected solar system that was launched last year on the grid, 10 megawatts, very small, but it's a step. And one of the major setback is the policy risk from the policy risk generally, because any private investor that is coming into that market, we also look at all the risks that are embedded in the electricity market, both from the conventional, because you have to see what is existing. That is what we dictate what is coming. If you look at the conventional electricity market, there's a huge lot of bottlenecks. There's no cost-reflective tariff across board. We had just recently, about 4 to 5 months ago, that they want to increase electricity by 40%. If you are to do real cost-reflective tariff, electricity averagely today will be around, let's say, 90 naira per kilowatt hour.
So it means the government is still subsidizing. And if government is subsidizing, there's a lot of huge debt with NBET that they've not been able to meet. So it means we need a lot of private sector investment to go into it. So the second challenge is the financial risk. If you look at the financial environment today, it's not too good in terms of encouraging investment in renewables. Majorly, if you look at the risk factor, we need to de-risk a lot of investment in renewables. The average lending rate today is 20-24%. And if you look at businesses today, a huge majority of what we used in the renewable is being imported. Look at the dollar rate. So a lot of this comes to play also. Then in terms of, there's a lot of fraud risk, security risk that comes into play when it comes to the development of the renewable energies in the market today. So today, what Total is actually doing is majorly B2B. Look at willing customers that can offtake the energy, and then we go into a contract. So, but for a lot of people, they also look at the security guarantee when it comes to contract. Because if you are doing such type of contract, you have to go into maybe long term, and you must have a guarantee. And you know, where you have in an environment where for you to seek a legal redress if there is a problem with the contract, spending long time in the judiciary to just have a case sorted out, contractual issues. So if you are having contractual issues in the court for 10 years and you have invested a lot. So these are the things that need to be considered in the renewable energy sector today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Idowu. So I'll move on to Mr. Olufisayo. You are the second vice president of Nigerian Gas Association. You are also with Axela as well. And I'd like to get your view on scaling investments. How can we improve investments in Nigeria's quest for alternative energy? Now, I'll draw an instance. In today's business day, it was reported foreign investment in oil and gas sector in Q2. We recorded 0. There was no investment in Q2. That's the first time in history. And we can't continue in the same narration we are doing with oil and gas to alternative energy. So how, in your view, how can Nigeria scale up investments in increasing penetration to alternative energy?
Thank you very much. I'm here today on behalf of Nigerian Gas Association.
You have less than 2 minutes, please. Okay,
thank you very much. So talking about scaling investments in the Nigerian gas industry, it's important that we address the fundamental issues that are plaguing our country. It's no gainsaying the fact that we are energy poor. And it's paradoxical because in terms of resources, we have the largest reserve in Africa. But what are we doing? And I don't need to rehash all the issues that have been enumerated by the previous speakers. But it's important that we focus on the levers. What really can make us scale? What really can make us turn the tide? For instance, it has to be liberalized. The market has to be liberalized. Thank God for the PIA. Some elements of deregulation is already there. But interestingly, if you look into the details, you see some conflicts as well, because there are elements of price control even still expressed in the PIA. So we have to have a fully liberalized market. It's when we have that we have a level playing field, that all these alternative energies that we're talking about can have a full expression. And we have to take a deliberate approach in doing this. Policy-wise, we've seen some actions from government. The policies that they have put forward looking good in some way, in good direction, but a lot of thought has to go behind it. Otherwise, it will just be flimsy and it will not achieve the end goal. Today, what we still see, over 60% of Nigerians are still using biomass. I mean, firewood for cooking and etc. we need to transition to a situation where people can use cleaner energy, LPG in this instance. And if we draw the correlation back to the industrial sector, it's important that people take advantage of the vast resources of gas that we have and gain the competitive advantage. Perhaps that's why our products are not export worthy or not competitive in the export market, because of cost of production. Energy is a big factor, is a big element. We need to work towards getting our energy costs more efficiently. And another point to also say is that the financing that is required to execute these projects, they are humongous. And there has to be government enablement in that regard. We've seen some signals, we've seen some intervention funds, but the scale of investment that is required for us to take the giant leap to scale in the manner that will address our energy poverty requires a significant investment, and we need a lot more coming from the government in that regard.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much. A round of applause for him, please. And so I'll move on to Mr. Daly. And you work with Sterling Bank. Sterling Bank have done a lot in terms of financing alternative energy. And he has talked about the challenges in terms of scaling up that financing, a lot of bottlenecks. If anyone wants to finance alternative energy now, I mean, the financial conditions are humongous, like he mentioned. How can we find our way out of all these bottlenecks?
Thank you very much. Yes, financing is a critical element in the energy transition plan, but it's not the only problem. Today, there's a lot of financing that has been geared towards the supply side. I mean, he spoke about the intervention facilities, for example, whether from the Central Bank of Nigeria directly, in terms of even Solar Power Niger project is there. There is a scheme for gas acceleration. There are financing opportunities from the Rural Electrification Agency. These are World Bank, African Development Bank sponsored grants-based schemes that are production incentives. But we realize that putting financing on the table on the supply side, as good as it is, it's not the complete equation. There's need for financing on the demand side as well. But even if we focus on the supply side, for example, if we're dealing with large-scale energy projects on the renewable side, for example, from our experience, whether you're a developer of mini-grid solutions or even C&I type, like the type that Total mentioned, or whether you are setting up local solar assembly plant. One thing that we've seen is that project development, building projects that are bankable, there's still a gap within that area. So in as much as there is financing available from government intervention facilities, from commercial banks like Sterling, we need to focus more of the financing available, even on the supply side, to capacity building, technical assistance. So how do we help developers? How do we help local assembly or manufacturing businesses to build credible, bankable projects that are commercially sustainable? I don't know if we can deal with that. So being able to develop commercially and financially viable and sustainable projects is something that we've seen as a major focal point. What do I mean by that? A lot of the businesses, not all, but quite a number of businesses that are developed today are built around grants and subsidies, even within the financing market. That is good on its own. But does it guarantee financial sustainability? When you withdraw those subsidies and those grants, how do we ensure that businesses can generate cash flows commercially in a way that they can have repetitive development? So if you're a portfolio developer for mini grid, for example, you build one that is based on grant. If that grant is taken away or that program is discontinued, will you be able to replicate that project in 10, 20 locations? That's very important.
Have Sterling Bank been able to do any of this?
Yes, of course, we have been.
Okay, can you share insight into
so let me backtrack a bit. I mean, we started this journey 5-6 years ago. We were doing a lot of talking, right? Policy advocacy, media campaigns, and all of that. We realized that the response wasn't as much as it should be, and we decided, look, it's time to walk the talk. So not only are we talking about financing customers' projects, we've now gone forward, not only to solarize, for example, our branches, we've gone forward to solarize our head office, because we realize that showcasing what is possible, first and foremost, is very important to making that bold announcement to say this is possible. Now, when you showcase, right, you are able to attract even international capital, and that's something we've seen. Today, hardly is there any DFI who is interested, and as you know, Europe, the financial market in Europe, so you mentioned something about Q2 investment in oil and gas being zero. Let's take that statistic to be correct. What that means is that the capital is there, it's just looking for some other destination or another sector. So because of the projects that we've done, we see a lot, we have attracted a number of interest from European DFIs and ECA type funders who are interested in coming to help scale. We've just supported the solar assembly plant in Ibejuleke. I don't know, I mean, for some of us may be aware of the launch of the Oxano last week. Is a 100 megawatt solar assembly plant, right? That's one thing that we've done. We've supported various other C&I type because the issue of contracts and bilateral contracts and tariff that was mentioned earlier is important, because then the way to mitigate that is to finance power purchase agreements that are bilateral in nature, where people have agreed, tariffs, and they are bankable, right? But we want to see that on a much broader scale, national scale, for universities, for farmlands, and for industrial type installations. So if we build credible, bankable projects that have strong cash flows into the future, I think financing is available locally. Financing is available from offshore.
I'm worried.
In the journey of Sterling, what we did was to create a different kind of subsidized financing package for solar, for the renewable, right? For solar and other renewable sources from our own capital. And this is the thing that foreign financiers are seeing, and they are saying, okay, if you have been able to do this with your own capital, it means that if we give you more, you can do a lot more. In fact, sometimes we do not even take liquidity from them. What we say is, come, let's share the risk. So we go into risk participation framework where we can insure or risk guarantee funds. You don't want to lose money. The risk is there. We are there not because we think the risk is not there. It's just because we've studied, we've done a lot of R&D around it, and we have a strategic focus on it. But if we have partners that are able to share risk with us, and they don't have to cough out any money today, we're just saying, look, let's enter an agreement. For every percentage loss of our portfolio, maybe because the businesses don't do well, you take X percent, we take X percent of the loss. That alone can bring down the cost of risk, which will reflect in the lending rate and can help us even deploy more capital. So these are opportunities that are available for investments, for collaboration, and the rest of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chimubi. We'll move on to Daniel.
Sorry, Dele. Not
Dele.
Chimubi.
Oh, sorry, Dele. Dele Fasimo, right? Yeah, Energy Infrastructure Finance at Sterling Bank. So move on to Daniel. You're with Adova. Can you give us a 2-minute brief of some of the laudable projects you are doing in terms of alternative energy? In 2 minutes.
Sure. I'll summarize what Ardova is working on in 3 to 4 buckets. We're talking about, we talked about EV initially, but behind that, of course, you have to solve the electricity gap in Nigeria. We spoke about the the gap, but just to put numbers or like figures to that, still about 50%, just about 50%, I think, we can say is not, of the Nigerian population doesn't have access to power. So to put that in perspective in terms of how AP is focusing on closing that gap is we're leveraging the decentralization policies that have recently been signed out there to make our stations a hub for where we generate power. So I've spoken about the EVs and the reason why, or rather the foundation for how we're going to also bring EVs to the market. And when I say bring EVs to market, I'm talking about making the Nigerian market more viable or enabling people to own electric vehicles by installing chargers in our stations. So those two go hand in hand because, of course, you need power. And I'm not talking about fossil fuel, diesel generated power. I'm talking about solar and other alternative type power that we are building at our stations that will feed into our EV chargers that we intend to install across our stations, about 450 and above. This includes AP and our NEO brand that we recently acquired to enable electric vehicle owners be able to just, drive across the nation if they want to, without having to worry about how do I get from point A to B because I can't charge my vehicle. So there's the power as a service, providing power to the EV charging business. And then we also have other smaller components, the solar home systems that we're retailing to also give access to people on the last mile.
So is this a Lagos thing? Are you doing this just in Lagos alone, or it's a national thing?
Yeah, so at the stage that we're at, for the EVs, for the EV charging business, we're going to pilot that in Lagos. But for the power as a service bucket, we have it in Lagos, we have it in Port Harcourt, we have it in Abuja, and that's going to expand out to about 10 megawatts worth of power that we're going to install across the nation, across our stations.
Oh, okay. I mean, nice. So let's hear from Africa Practice. I mean, you've just give us an overview of some of the things you are doing in Nigeria in terms of alternative energy, and tell us how you plan to scale them up in the coming years.
Thank you. So Africa Practice is a strategic advisory firm operating at the nexus of industry and government. We provide insights and advocacy solutions to corporations, governments, investors, foundations to help them improve their investments in Africa. Particularly, we're working with the U.S. Grains Council, which is a conglomerate of the largest ethanol producers in North America. And we're working with them to develop markets across West Africa, including in Nigeria, for the ethanol market. Now, ethanol blending with fuel is an established practice that is in practice in over 20 countries and was temporarily in practice before it was suspended in Nigeria. And the benefits of ethanol blending with fuel are profound. There are economic savings. Let me break it down. So Ms. Gray explained how fueling her car cost her about 57,000. With an E10 blend, you can have savings of up to 40 naira per liter. So that 57,000 would have been more like 53,000 naira to fuel her car. And beyond the economic savings, you also have the environmental savings, which has lower carbon emissions and is in line with Nigeria's commitments on climate and helping to attain our net zero emissions. And beyond that, you also have the benefit of the fact that it doesn't require any form of conversion. With CNG, with LNG, with EV, you require some purchases. Majority of the vehicles in Nigeria now can handle an E10 blend at least. Higher levels of blend, maybe you might need some conversion, but an E10 blend is compatible with most cars in Nigeria. And ethanol blending is something that Brazil has been doing since the 70s. Zimbabwe is doing it, South Africa is doing it, Malawi is doing it. So it's an established trend across the world, not just in developed countries.
Oh, okay. Fantastic. And you've been doing this since when?
So we've been supporting the U.S. Grains Council in advancing this in Nigeria for about the past 2-3 years now. But then we also have other innovative ideas in the alternative energy field that we are working with other clients across Africa. Most notably is the green hydrogen. We're looking at the various renewable energy sources across Africa and seeing how we can leverage that to develop a green energy economy across Africa.
Okay, thanks. We'll move on to Mr. Olufisayo. I mean, how can Nigeria overcome the roadblocks we currently are facing? I mean, they've talked about infrastructure, they've talked about lack of holistic policy, there's issues concerning financing, there's even issues concerning knowledge, the technical know-how to run these alternative energy. So, I mean, in your view, what are the step 1, step 2 to overcome all of the bottlenecks we face?
Thank you very much. I think we must, the market must be fully liberalized, like I said earlier. And to do that is that we must fully deregulate, for instance. We know that the president had taken the bull by the horn at the beginning of this new administration. But of course, we've been hearing news here and there, whether or not it's creeping up again. But we have to be deliberate about that. If we do that, then we have opened the market to the forces of demand and supply. And as you are doing that in one hand, you are also opening the market up for competition. As competition increases, then you start to even get higher customer satisfaction, and customer service would be improved across board. And by so doing, you start to get price differentiation across board. And it will also help us ultimately to attract all these alternative energies, because you will not be comparing apple with oranges. You'll be comparing likes for like. It's not because that the price of one is subsidized, it's why it's getting advantage over the other. So that is really how I think we can move from where we are to a state where Nigeria is able to leverage alternative energies.
Oh, okay. So, Mr. Idowu, in 3 steps, tell us what Total Energy is doing in terms of scaling alternative energy in the last 2 to 3 years.
Okay, what we are doing is in the space of solar. Today we have about 550 stations, and we have 250 solarized already, and we are currently increasing the capacity to have all our stations solarized. Also in the B2B spaces also, we are engaging with commercial and industrial clients to develop solar for them, and today we have about 6.5 megawatts. Already we are currently in a construction stage for a 5 megawatts in Kano for one of our B2B clients. So we are developing solar for B2B clients also, and also for off-grid solutions for larger scale, for willing customer, bankable customer. We're also looking at that. Currently we are discussing with some discos and the state government in developing solar at that particular end. So, and we've been doing this since 2016. Total as a whole have been doing solar like since 2011, and we just have a branch, a new affiliate currently under registration that will be focused on gas, renewables, and power, because we actually, because of the energy transition and greenhouse effect gas, we need to reduce our investments in heavy carbon emission to low carbon and renewable.
Yeah, so can you share more light on your discussion with discos? So when you say discussion with disco, what do you mean?
Yeah, they are still it's still confidential, but just to
how will it work? So
yes, what we'll do is to deploy. Once we have a contract, we deploy solar. We are going to finance it because we are developers. So we are financing projects.
Well, okay, so you finance a project and then you give it.
We run it. We also build it. We run it for the contract here.
Oh, okay, and then the end product will be.
Yes, will be offtake by the disco.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Because the discos have percentage of renewables they should have in their portfolio
think it's about 30% energy mix.
Yeah.
If you look at today in Nigeria, none of them is complying to that. So part of what Total is doing is to approach these discos and see what we can do in terms of bankable business.
Okay, would that be coming on stream this year?
No, not this year. These are long-term projects.
Oh, okay. Okay, so let's talk to Mr. Mr. Daly. Yes. So, I mean, Sterling Bank have done a lot of laudable things in terms of alternative energy. We've seen alternative energy in some of your branches across the country, your headquarters completely powered with solar, and you are doing the talk. You are not just telling people, no, let's turn to alternative. You are showing how it's possible. But then how can we, and I've heard you when you said we need to increase the number of bankable projects in Nigeria, and we need to scale that up. But then the question is how? How can we do this? And how can we make sure that this is a national thing? It's not just a Lagos thing.
All right, thank you very much. There are different parts of the value chain. We can focus on all the different parts at the same time. We can choose to focus on the critical elements. So if you take the demand side, for example, how do we enable the demand side? Because investments will look for where they can, reap returns, right? And you can't reap returns if there is no cash flow. So we speak about the electricity market in Nigeria, for example. A lot of attention is around collection, because that's where the cash originates from, all the way to Genco and to gas suppliers, right? So for this same space, it's the same thing. So we're doing a lot in terms of providing consumer asset finance, if you talk about the solar home system segment, for example, so that we can enable demand at that level, right? So before now, you could only get a 2-year loan if you wanted to buy a typical solar home system. Today, depending on your cash flow and your economic status, you can get up to 4 or 5 years for consumer asset financing. When that market segment is energized, right, it's an incentive to those who are either bringing in the components or even those who are planning to assemble locally. That's one element. We do that. If you look at the assembly side, now we're now beginning to see a lot of interest in local assembly, and then ultimately local manufacturing will happen. Now, if we have tens or hundreds of the Oxanos of this world in Nigeria, the critical element of concern for them, for any financial investor, will be who is going to buy this output from them. So we need to begin to talk about local content, right? So there are a lot of projects Total is doing. Everybody here is doing different projects. Government projects are also available, right? Particularly if you go to all the initiatives that the REA is sponsoring. Can we have a situation where we embed some percentage local content into those projects, where we say, if you want to develop this project, right, a certain element of it has to be locally sourced. So we create a market for those who are assembling or manufacturing locally. That's another way. Capacity building is very important. There's still a lot of skill gap, right? Not because of knowledge, but even technical skills. One of our vendors, for example, spoke to us a year ago, and at that time, they were only able to assemble only 4 units of complete solar home system locally. It's not because they don't have the input, they simply do not have the manpower, right? So if we enable at that level as well, so industry trainings, technical certifications, embed them in vendors, embed them in projects, people coming out of technical colleges, polytechnics, universities, and all of those things, so that we can actually have support, technical support for mini grids that are being built, for C&I projects that are being developed, for solar home system support and maintenance. That will go a long way, because trust is an element that we've seen that we need to address. Financing is one part. Trust in terms of the quality of products, trust in terms of, if I acquire this, what support is available over the life of the asset. So these are different things that are being done. The other part is, of course, alternative energy is not just energy generation, but even within transport. Everybody has spoken about EVs. We made a decision in Sterling to say, look, let us go towards the infrastructure aspect of the value chain. It's a risk, but we are sure, we're reasonably sure, that when that charging infrastructure is available, it will also enable adoption. The Nigerian market has been known to be early adopters of technology, so we have no concerns about that much. And then on top of that, we put financing behind it, supporting everybody within the ecosystem and deploying charging stations in different locations, working with partners, working with government agencies, R&D agencies. So these are the things that we are currently already doing to ensure that the entire value chain, the entire ecosystem is enabled and energized for the transition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, Mr. Abdul, you are the CEO of A2 Energy Limited. Can you give us a 2-minute description of some of your investments in alternative energy or some of the things you've done in alternative energy in the last 2 to 3 years, and give us your outlook for the next 4 years?
Excellent. Thank you and good morning, everybody. At A2 Energy, we are focused on harnessing the mineral resources of the continents. We are blessed abundantly with lithium, which, to start out with, let me actually say, the future of energy is battery. We've heard about EV technologies, we've heard about solar, wind. However, all of this requires a storage, which is batteries. So at A2 Energy, we are a mining-focused company. However, we are harnessing the power of lithium, which is it's the single element in the manufacture of batteries. It enables the electric charge for the batteries. So for us, we are developing a mine in Kwara State, adding value chain. So we will utilize the minerals mined here into production of battery-grade hydroxide or carbonates. Those will be used to then invent batteries. Now, most EV companies or most technologies are outside of Africa. I have been here for a while. I have not heard anyone talk about batteries. And we cannot move into the future of renewables without batteries. So for us, one of the major challenges we are experiencing is policies with the government. I have not heard the minister or anyone from the government even talk about value chain for our mineral resources. We want to mine. We have cobalt, coltan, lithium, the highest ingredients of products that we need for the batteries. And in Africa, in Nigeria especially, our lithium is in what we call hard rocks. It is less devastating to nature, easily mined, easy process. The West are currently now focused on extracting our minerals and shipping out for their production of their batteries for the EVs and the solar. I want to plant a seed. I am looking at a future whereas we can potentially stay off grid. We're developing a mine, as I mentioned, in Kwara State. The mine will require tremendous power. Now, we are in a remote area, approximately 40 kilometers away from the nearest power supply. And with innovation, we can harness the power of wind technology, we can harness solar, and we have a great river about 30 kilometers away from our site. We can look into hydropower as well. We have mandated that we want to stay off the grid. So we have to innovate. As Dr. Henrietta said, we have the human capacity to innovate and to drive change. I saw a picture from 1901 to in 1901, it was nothing but horses and carriages on the streets in America. And by 1910, there was a drastic change. It was completely vehicles. And I tell people, if we do not jump on the bandwagon of renewables right now, we will get left behind. Because in the next 10, 20 years, combustion engines will be obsolete. and we have to be at the forefront of it. So for A2 Energy, our ultimate goal is the development of Nigeria, the development of Africa, the development of human capacity, and how can we take our God-given natural resources and turn it into something that we can all benefit from.
Okay, thank you. I mean, just one thing. I mean, you said you're doing a lot in Kwara State in terms of mining activities. If there's one thing you would want the government to fix, I mean, this is a policy intervention series. If there's one policy you would want, I know there's a lot of challenges you're currently dealing with. There's the FX challenges, there's the double taxation challenges. I mean, it's a lot. If there's one thing you would want the government to fix, what would that be?
For the government, the biggest challenge for us is policies. So we
also,
have
can you be more specific? What kind
So we have to bring investment in from outside of the country. There is no policy that protects investors from them being able to get their money out. So the biggest challenge I have is having to sell Nigeria because we have a clout of negativity around us, and the government are not doing anything to create policies that enables investors to come in with the confidence that they can invest, we will succeed, and then they can get their money back out. So that's the biggest driving factor for us in terms of government policies.
Wow, interesting. So I feel your pain about that. Let's talk to Africa Practice. I mean, you've been around for a while now. What are those low-hanging fruits you think we can leverage on in Nigeria in terms of alternative energy to scale up where we are now to where we want to be?
Thank you. I think the low-hanging fruit, because it's a transition. Right now, not everybody can afford an EV. Not everyone can afford to pay for the conversion. But we have immediate savings through ethanol, for example. Ethanol can be produced from maize, can be produced from sugarcane, it can be produced from cassava, for which Nigeria is the largest producer. And there's a common debate of food versus fuel. But I want to put that debate to rest now, because producing ethanol from maize, for example, is the inedible part of maize that is used for the production of ethanol. Yes, there's the argument of soil management, as those inedible parts help with protecting erosion and protecting the organic content of the soil, but it's a case of management. Likewise with cassava, about 40% of the cassava produced in Nigeria is wasted. Enabling that market and developing that market where we can convert our cassava to ethanol produces not just stability for the farmers, but it also minimizes these post-harvest losses, building up the economy in that direction and creating a more stable environment both for food production and fuel production. So I'll say ethanol is the shortest quick win, which can help us in transitioning to solar, EVs, and every other laudable alternative energy that my fellow panelists have mentioned.
Wow, so we are pressed for time, and we would like to stop the conversation here. I don't know if there's any question for the panelists. If in the absence of none, anyone who would want to. Okay, so okay, the publisher.
I wanted to just talk to our friend from Sterling Bank. There is a road to supporting and financing projects, but there is also a path to scaling the consumer finance bit, so that as we are building supply, we are also, catalyzing demand as well. What has been for you and your bank the biggest obstacle? When you look at photographs from all around the world of residential places, you see significant display of solar panels on roofs. We don't see it in Nigeria, despite the fact that we are always in darkness. So what has been the biggest problem, and why is it that other banks are slow in joining the trend? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Two questions in one. Obstacles, there are a number of them. And I'll try and itemize, not in any particular order. Let's begin with alternatives that people see. So for example, until the removal, in quote, of subsidy on petrol, PMS was a major alternative source. So for every household, I mean, you have limited source of income, your disposable income is fixed generally, so you want to go for what you consider the cheapest source of energy. Petrol was, to a large extent. So the campaign about adoption of solar energy system, for example, didn't catch as much fire because the entry cost, of course, was significant or is still significant. And people then look at the alternative in terms of the next equivalent to the same capacity of a petrol generator is much cheaper, and the cost of fueling it over time, government was bearing a lot of that cost. Now, when subsidy was taken away, and of course, even at the onset of the Russia-Ukraine crisis and price of exchange rate and price of crude oil went up, diesel became more expensive, we saw a spike in the demand for solar home systems. So that validates our understanding of one of the limiting factors. That's one. Secondly, even for those who do not mind the cost, there was the poor awareness and a lot of myths around it. Can it power my air conditioners? Can it pump my water? Can it power my office building? That is beginning to change. I mean, we've done a lot of campaigns, but we're just scratching the surface. So we need to do more about creating awareness, which is one of the reasons that we went into a 955 kilowatt peak project for our head office. And it's powering. It's not only powering the ACs, it's powering our lift, powering our data center, and all of that. So that message is out there, but we just need to keep repeating it. It's a limiting factor. You'll be surprised that, of course, for those who live in rented apartments, the obstacle with dealing with landlords is a challenge when landlords do not want you to put solar panels on their roofs for reasons understandable, right? But I mean, a lot of the conversations we've had with Lagos State government, for example, one of the things we're advocating is that we should embed into the real estate policies and the housing policies where those kind of limitations are taken away. We want to be able to ensure that tenants who want to take up solar home systems are not limited by their landlords in putting, because these things are removable anyway, and they do not damage the roofs. So we need the market, we need the public to be aware that it's the same way they can put DSTV decoders and dishes, it's the same way they should be able to put solar panels on their roofs. In fact, we jokingly say that we want to see a situation where each time you look out the window, all the roofs in Lagos, for example, and then of course across Nigeria, are covered with solar panels. If we take residences away from the grid alone, the grid would even be more available to power industrial uses. And we can solve, because the strategic end of all of this conversation is not just energy transition, but solving for energy poverty. We can't talk about energy transition when we're still energy poor. The last data is that at least half the population do not have access to electricity, and that number can be worse in remote areas. I mean, he just spoke about being in a location in Kwara State where 40 kilometers away from the grid. So we see that is a problem. Financing, of course, traditionally has been seen as a problem. Now, even when the cost of these components are reducing globally, because we're in a unique situation in Nigeria where we're dealing with exchange rate issues, the landing cost then increases with, I don't want to say devaluation, but with currency adjustment, right? So we're not getting the benefit of the scaling that is happening in the global market. There's a lot of improvement in battery technology that is driving down the cost, a lot of improvement in solar panel PV technology that is driving down the cost. If not for the COVID and then Ukrainian war that led to a spike in the logistics cost, right? It's our currency issue that is not letting us see the impact of that. We can solve for that with creative financing. by letting people, pay small, using the Nigerian parlance. The other model that we have seen, that we have used in Sterling, is power as a service, right? Yes, culturally, we like to own our assets in Nigeria, but we've seen people who are willing to go into the power as a service model. So come connect to my house, enter a 2-year, energy purchase contract. We agree a fixed charge, and I pay as we go. I don't need to worry myself about the cost of maintenance or insurance or anything. The financier takes the headache. At the end of my contract, if I'm not satisfied with service, you can unplug and go and deploy somewhere else. We're looking forward to a time when there is a secondary market for solar home system, for example, for pre-owned batteries, not the spoiled ones, if you can use that language, but pre-owned, of assets that are still usable. Panels can be removed and reinstalled in other places. That's another market that is potentially huge. The same way you have a market for pre-owned vehicles in Nigeria today. So you can have a primary market, you can have a secondary market. So financing can solve for the problem of acquisition or initial outlay, right? Power as a service contracts can solve for that, and so on. And so these are different ways. And for us in Sterling, we even went a step further by creating a digital platform, which is an online marketplace, Imperium, which is a marketplace for demand and supply. So vendors can go there, list your product, consumers can go there, buy products, and there is consumer credit embedded on that platform, where you can get credit score, have a limit, and you can shop with that limit. So there's a whole lot that is being done, but we're still scratching the surface. And that leads me to the second part of your question. Why are other commercial banks not coming in? I probably will not be able to answer for them, but I think that people need to take a strategic view. I mean, we did. That's why we're in it. We saw the future. We think that this is the future. We believe that this is the future, and we're seeing the benefit anyway. We just hope the other banks will come along in due course. Thank you.
Okay, so the future to this discussion is we need to wrap up. We are pressed for time. Please, let's give them a round of applause. It's been very insightful. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks. Picture? A picture? Yeah.
industry group presentations and the distinguished speakers. So we'll call on Mr. Isong, yeah, Mr. Clement. We will call on Mr. Clement Isong, the CEO of Moment Group, to give us our closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me start by thanking the publisher and the team of Business Day for the opportunity to contribute to this policy intervention series. The government is still new. There is what they promised Nigeria, and then now that they are on ground, they are seeing the reality. For instance, we hear that we thought we had $33 billion in our reserve. Maybe it's not so much. So that reality will cause them to go back and rethink their implementation of what they thought was the way forward. So this is a very opportune moment to make a contribution to that discussion. So I hope that we are happy that the authority, the regulator of our industry, is online, is listening. An executive director who is in charge of the numbers. It's extremely important that what she has heard goes into those policy discussions. In my engagements with those in government, I found that very many of them do not know what is already happening. So the presenters were excellently chosen because entrepreneurship, I think, is one of the key ways of bringing to market very many of the alternative energies. But it was also useful because each member of the panel is already doing something. And very many people, both from the demand side, the consumers, they do not know what is available. And then from the policymakers side, they didn't know we were as far as ahead as we are. People still ask that question. There's no NEPA, how are you going to do EV? You know, I used to sell solar a long time ago when I was working for Total. It is only until I had solar in my house that I fully understood I can be completely off-grid in my house. Completely off-grid. And I started doing it with my mother's house. So for amounts that are not so big, you can charge your car, your car using solar in your house. There are opportunities out there that the consumers need to know about. So I'm extremely hopeful that the consumers will get to hear from here what is possible. Decisions have to be made. There are those people who are exposed to the kind of information and they go back and life continues. Hopefully, when they go back, they will make the choices to, well, the increase in fuel costs, in PMS costs, will force many of us to make those decisions. Because government was subsidizing PMS before, we were living a false life. Now that PMS is approaching its appropriate price as an energy source, it will compete with other energy sources. And decisions need to be made by consumers, especially those who will need to move to mass transportation, and investors and operators, which energy source to gravitate towards. Energy poor is a word that I heard today. Nigeria is energy poor. That is the truth. There is enough space to accommodate all energies. All energies. We will compete in terms of efficiency. We will compete in terms of capacity. We will compete based on your strengths and your weaknesses. But compete we must. I think my chairman speaks to, Frank said it here today, my chairman speaks to what we call the station of the future. We are in the retailing business. What will the station of the future offer you? It will offer you LPG. It will offer you CNG. It will offer you EV. It will offer you petrol. It will offer you diesel. It will offer you, do we have a picture to put up? It will offer you, oh, it will run on solar.
Able to send the presentations later? Yes, we can. So thank you so much. You can network.